Many say the HR 6600 bill, if approved, could be existential threat for Ethiopia, endangering its national security, citizens' rights, as well as the country's sovereignty. And to help us shed some light on the matter, I'm joined here by Meron Ahadu, the founding member of Global Ethiopian Advocacy Nexus. This is our weekly Addis Dialogue. With it, I'm Shfaralago, to service. Meron, thank you so much for making the time to join me.
Thank you so very much for inviting me on your program. Good day to you.
All right, good day to you too. To start with, what is this bill all about? That's S3199 and also HR 6600. And what are some of the short and long-term worst scenarios, if you will, and the dangers of this bill? And why do they have to resort to such a course of action, Meron?
Thank you so very much for, again, for having me on your program. In discussing these two bills, we have to look at the background a little bit on what's been going on in the past year since the conflict in northern Ethiopia started. Since that time, I can say, for some reason, the U.S. government has been pressuring the Ethiopian government and to, I would say, to get TPLF back on the table, to have them negotiate. And for some odd reason, they have not recognized that everything that is happening in Ethiopia or that has occurred in northern Ethiopia is the responsibility of TPLF. They cannot, for some odd reason, they cannot recognize that TPLF is the one that started this conflict, and Ethiopia had no choice, or the Ethiopian government had no choice but to defend itself and to stop this, what I would say, TPLF's attempt to overthrow the government of Prime Minister Abiy. So basically, just to give a little background, that is where we are. We've gone through a lot of different resolutions that have been introduced in the past year that would like to sanction or that have attempted to sanction Ethiopia and Eritrea because for some odd reason, and this is because of the influence that TPLF and its supporters have on the different branches of the U.S. government. They've attempted to sanction, to pressure Ethiopia. All kinds of fake news, coordinated fake news has been coming out about Ethiopia's role, Eritrea's role, the humanitarian aspect, the human rights violations, so-called human rights violations that have been going on in Tigray, even though the UN Human Rights Commission and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission have come out with reports that have debunked that. But that still doesn't seem to have dissuaded the U.S. government and some legislators in trying to strong-arm Ethiopia.
Yeah, okay. Meron, as you know, the United States of America has imposed various sanctions on different nations across the globe. They have, however, blatantly failed, so to speak, to bring about regime change. And the only change seems to be the suffering of the general public. So why has the United States of America failed to learn from its historical mistakes? And why is it threatening Ethiopia with such bills and sanctions?
You know that's a very good point that you're bringing up. You also wanted you in your previous question you asked why is this being done?
Yeah,
From where I stand, you really pointed it out. It is regime change that I believe is wants the U.S. government or some aspects of the U.S. government want in
yeah,
Ethiopia. And so, what has sanctions done for different countries in that sanctions have been imposed on? We can take the case of Zimbabwe. We can take the case of Cuba. We can take the case of Venezuela. All these have been attempts at regime changes. That is the reason the U.S. government or parts of the U.S. government doesn't like the regime in power. Then what they do is they impose sanctions to weaken the government in power and for the government to collapse. That basically is the end game. So what has it done? Well, what it has done really is it has not impacted the people in power, whether it's in Cuba, Venezuela, or Zimbabwe. What it has done is it has really and truly impacted the working people, the people that are trying to eke out a living, to just try to make a day in and day out. The economy completely shatters, and inflation skyrockets, and this makes it very, very difficult. Jobless impacts the citizenry. So that's where the direct impact comes in. For example, and then we can, Eritrea is a very good example. There hasn't been a regime change, but what it has done is it has devastated the economy of the
yeah,
country. What we also, in our case, or in Ethiopia's case, we could take a look at AGOA. AGOA
yeah,
was, a plan that helps, that has provided jobs for thousands, if not millions, of women, you know, head of a household. And now, because of AGOA, Ethiopia has been delisted from AGOA. These thousands and even millions of women who are heads of households are losing their jobs. Factories are going to be closed, are closing down, from my understanding,
yeah,
and that has a direct impact on the citizenry. So the calculation is that when that happens, the population, the people are going to revolt and bring down the governments. That's the end game.
mm.
That's what the calculation is.
If this bill uh, approved, if this bill is approved by President Joe Biden, um, many say that it can also affect Ethiopia's security, finance, investment spheres, greatly reducing the engagement of the diaspora communities in their national development. What are some of your observations in this regard?
Okay, thank you so very much for that question. Yeah, you've pinpointed where what this bill entails, HR 6600 and the Senate Bill 3199. If we look at the House Bill 6600, and by the way, the Senate Bill 3199 is very similar. It's not too many differences between the two, but to be specific
Yeah,
on the House Bill, which was introduced by Representative Melanowski and rammed through the Foreign Relations Committee in just 2 days. That has never, ever happened. It was introduced on a Friday, and it was rammed through the Foreign Relations Committee on Tuesday, and it's now heading to the House for a full vote. So, what does it entail? Well, the US government is given 90 days, or the Secretary of State is given 90 days, which is basically 3 months, to make sure that all kinds of the security assistance is stopped. Financing that Ethiopia would have, not only from the US government, but also from international organizations like World Bank and other international finance organizations are stocked as well. And then the other very interesting thing that I've never seen it in all the years of my advocacy work. I've never seen this kind of a draconian bill, to tell you the truth. Yeah. And then it also impacts, or will impact if it passes, the diaspora that is sending assistance to its family members, or is assisting, financing the rehabilitation efforts that would be, that need to go on. They would criminalize, that this bill would, if passed, would criminalize anyone that they feel is supporting the war effort, as they would put it. Okay, it's an all-around bill that would really put pressure on Ethiopia, and it is supposed to last for 10 years. Okay, which is a very interesting thing. The end game, again, is to put pressure on Ethiopia for the economy to collapse. Okay, you don't get finance, you don't get loans, you don't get remittance from the diaspora. Investments. That's one of the things that you also mentioned. Investments are also going to be curtailed. Military assistance, of course, that is going to be stopped as well. So it's an all-around, effort to cripple. The end game is regime change. So because it collapses, the government collapses, and that's where it wants to head. It's unfortunate. It's a draconian bill. This is something that anyone, and this is Ethiopians, Ethiopian Americans, Eritreans, Eritrean Americans, and actually friends of Ethiopia that should be speaking out against this bill. This bill is a racist bill. There's no question about it. We have never, ever seen anything like this anywhere else. So it also, of course, targets the government or government officials wanting to claim that there was genocide that occurred in Tigray, and wants to hold different elements of the Ethiopian government responsible for what they claim was a genocide that occurred.
Yeah.
That's in a nutshell, that's what it is. Just to give you how this process works. So on the House side, HR 6600 was introduced by Representative Melanowski, and this was done in the early part of February, I believe February 6 or 8. So it's passed through the Foreign Relations Committee, and now it's heading to the full House for a vote. So worst case scenario, we can, if it passes the House, then that is when the Senate, that's where the Senate bill S3199 comes in, because the another bill, this S3199, which is a mirror image of the House bill, will again be rammed through. And what's happening, just to kind of go back on that, um, the Senate bill was supposed to have gone up for a vote yesterday uh, to the Foreign Relations Committee. Because of the hard work of Ethiopian Americans, Eritrean Americans, who have worked very, very hard to contact their senators, it was placed on hold by Senator Rounds. Okay, so the Senate bill was introduced by Senator Menendez, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. It's been put on hold for now. It will be on the calendar, or it is in the calendar for next week, if I'm not mistaken, the 28th, for a vote at the Foreign Relations Committee. So if it passes the Foreign Relations Committee, what will happen again is it will go towards this to the full Senate floor for a vote. After that, the two bills will what they will call, there's a process what they call a conference, where they will combine the two bills and make it one and present it to the president for signature.
Oh.
So we do have a little process, a little space for us to really push back on these draconian bills and expose how they are racist and not acceptable at all.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Meron. Draconian indeed. So now, if this bill has all these impacts and others, of course, that we didn't cover. So the question here is, what should be done, right? So what should be done by the diaspora communities and the government of Ethiopia to keep this bill from being approved?
Okay, thank you so very much for that question. Just to touch on briefly on what the Ethiopian government should be doing, I think the Ethiopian government should really make its unhappiness known diplomatically, of course, to the U.S. government, that this, because the Ethiopian government really has given a lot of concessions. The fact that they unilaterally stopped the war. And the release of political prisoners, of the top TPLF leaders release from prison. Those are things that the Ethiopian government has done, and also its attempt, to provide humanitarian assistance throughout this past year to Tigray is something that really needs to be noted by the U.S. government. And also, another thing that was very important is that even though the Ethiopian government has stopped the war and is on a defensive posture, TPLF has not. It's we hear of the incursions in Afar and what the damages that are still being done. The IDPs, the displaced people, all these things, and the blockage of the humanitarian assistance by TPLF. This should be noted, and this should be stressed by the Ethiopian government. And I think, really, this is my personal opinion, the Ethiopian government has given as much as they can. They can't give in any further. That's how I look at it. On the other hand, what can be done, or what can the diaspora do? that the diaspora is doing everything uh, in its power to push back on its bill. But the main thing is the diaspora needs to stand together. It needs to be united, just as it did a few months back when it said no more, no more interference, um, and that really, I think, made a difference. And that they paid attention because we all stood together, shoulder to shoulder, in saying no, no more. That is, that energy needs to come back to the diaspora. There are some aspects, there are some concerns, which is understandable, but everything needs to be put aside. This is whether there will be an Ethiopia or not. Okay, so what are we doing? We're doing everything. What we did, for example, in the last few days, made the Senate bill stop on its track for the time being, of course. The phone call campaigns to the different members of the Foreign Relations Committee. We have to keep doing that. We have to keep contacting our representatives. We are voters. Most of us are voters. We need to be signing petitions, sending it in. We need to go back to hitting the streets, demonstrating, and naming and shaming these representatives and senators that have sponsored this draconian bill and are interfering in the sovereignty of a country, of a poor country. So, in a nutshell, those are the things that need to be done.
As you know, some Americans are also against this bill, right? Including senators. So what should they also do to keep it from being, approved?
Yes, our work in this past year and a half, has gotten us some good friends. And just like I mentioned earlier, Senator Downs of South Dakota, for example, is a very good friend. Senator Inhofe is a very good friend. So these senators really need to be speaking out. On the House side, we have friends like Representative John Garamendi and Representative Karen Bass, who we consider as friends. And they need to be speaking out and saying sanctions never work. Sanctions kill. Sanctions hurt the people. They need to be bold enough. If they're Democrats, they need to be bold enough to go against their party line. If they are Republicans, they need to call out the Biden administration and the Democrats that are pushing these kinds of draconian bills. So we do have friends of Ethiopia, non-Ethiopians. We have Africans, Eritreans, we have Somalians, we have Sudanese, we have Zambians, we have Kenyans that have stood with us shoulder to shoulder when Ethiopia, some months ago, was under a lot of threat. We need for them to be vocal. We need for them to be speaking out and saying, hands off Ethiopia. So those are, some of the things that I would suggest.
Okay. Let me ask you this question finally, and we'll come to the end of our program. Some seem to be minimizing the negative impacts of this draconian bill, as you said, and are working shamelessly with agents pushing for the passing of the bill. Do you have any message to such agents?
That's the unfortunate part. That's the unfortunate part that there is some sort of a misconception or confusion on who this, what impact this bill is going to have, and who it is going to impact. For some odd reason, the people that are upset with um, with the Ethiopian government uh, for what they claim is its inaction on some parts of Ethiopia, uh, are being very short-sighted. Are being very short-sighted in the sense that they seem to think that this is only going to be these bills are only going to be targeting the individuals in the government. That's not the case. That
Yeah.
is not the case at all. The first casualty is going to be the population, the poor people of Ethiopia that are just trying to make a living, that
Yeah.
are just trying to survive. And my message is let's not lose focus. Who we are standing with is the people of Ethiopia. We have to be able to differentiate between Ethiopia and the government,
Yes.
Ethiopians and the government. It's very, very important that we be
Mm.
able to differentiate that. Governments come and go, okay? But the country has to be there for us to uh, air our grievances, um, talk about, who did this, who did that, or and so forth. If there's no country, we have, you know, there, there's nothing to talk about. So that's
Yes.
where we are right now. We are, if this bill passes, it really, really is going to destroy Ethiopia and fragment, whatever is there. It's going to be a devastating impact on Ethiopia. Okay, forget
Yes.
about the government. The government will possibly collapse, and then what? What's the end game for those that are saying we support this bill?
Yeah.
So my message is please don't be short-sighted. Please differentiate between the population, the people, the country, and the government.
Thank you so much for your wonderful ideas and your time, Meron.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Farah, for having me on your program. I really appreciate it.
Well, the viewers, with that, we come to the end of today's program. And many thanks for being with us. Till I see you next time with another program. It's goodbye from me, Shfaralak.